What you're fixing to see here, those that care anything about history and care anything about the future, if you got any children, any grandchildren, etc. What we're fixing to witness here is the beginning phases of one of the biggest left turns that America has ever partaken in regards towards starting the Freedom War by the Bush family. I personally believe that that this was done intentionally, not accidentally, but intentionally, for a distraction towards trying to take people's minds and people's eyes off of the true enemy and trying to focus on another enemy that really and truly to this day the Taliban renounces that they had anything to do with 9/11. To this day, though they were savages, though they was cruel and indifferent, and they are towards being barbarians, to this day they still say that they didn't have nothing to do with 9/11. So now the deck is being stacked, and now it's being stacked in the opposite direction towards what the American people had led to believe, going all the way back to the Desert Shield and Desert Storm War that once more that was created by the Bush family. Now, I have put a lot of thought into a lot of this because I know the fundamentals of what happened and how it happened, going all the way into the Reagan era, back whenever I was only 27 years old in 1983. Keep in mind, Reagan got shot by Hinckley. Reagan was considered a hero. Reagan run for president on the second term and won it hands down. Mr. Reagan was a very, very boisterous person. He was good in his stance, and a lot of the things that he said made a whole lot of sense and still does to this day. Keep in mind, Bush Sr. was at the scene whenever John F. Kennedy was assassinated down in Dallas, Texas, before he started working or being associated with the CIA. At that time, he was only involved with Secret Service. I have drawn this line down, going all the way to a secret society inside a society pertaining to the Homeland Security, that's where the heart of this all began, towards taking a left turn. And of course, in 1991, up in Wheeling, West Virginia, they basically paid off a federal judge and got a prosecutor to say that I had made an alleged threat to George W. Bush's life, in which I never did. And their conclusion was, oh, there must be some sort of malfunction with the equipment is the only reason why that we didn't have it on tape. Had everything else on tape, but they did not have an actual threat. And the reason why that they didn't have an actual threat, because there never was a threat. I never have threatened any of the Bush's families. But also, as you're listening to this, and we're kind of ending this era towards opening up a new page in a new paragraph here, keep in mind that it was Saddam Hussein that threatened to kill Mr. Old Man Bush Sr. That is, I believe, the only reason why that we engaged into the Desert Storm and the Desert Shield fiasco towards stirring up the Middle Easterners, and then after we left, it created a vacuum for all the terrorists. And basically, we're doing the exact same thing now in Afghanistan that we have spent 20 plus years in, towards thinking that we was going to conform, modify, change a group of people, and now we're leaving and we're jerking the biscuit out of everybody's mouth and saying adios, toodaloo, good luck. I love my country. Don't get me wrong. I love my country, and I would be willing to die before I get through with this session for my country, because I still to this day believe that this is one of the greatest countries on this whole entire planet that we call Earth. But there's certain aspects that has happened within the government that has made me snarl up and curl up and clench my fist at times towards just exactly what has and what is happening pertaining to our government officials. And it just didn't start in the federal arena. It just didn't start in the state arena in my particular life. It actually started in all three sectors: federal, state, and local, right here in a little section in Northwest Tennessee called Weakley County. Weakley, as in feeble, Weakley. And I know a lot of people snigger and laugh because I make mistakes, I make typos, I spell words incorrectly, I jab up the English, I basically just butcher it up sometimes because I wasn't educated properly because of the abusiveness that was going on in the family. I had to abandon ship. I had to get out of here. Either that or possibly something entirely bad was going to happen, other than me getting my ass beat about every other day because of me spilling a glass of milk, or I forgot to take the garbage out, or I put the bottles in the wrong place, or I didn't stay on the tractor long enough, even though I had to go to school the next morning. In addition to me watching my other brothers be abused by the same abuser, by a World War II drill sergeant that thought, I guess, that his you-know-what didn't stink because nobody around in this area at the time was willing to challenge him and say, Bob, why don't you back off a little bit? You're bringing harm and hurt to your children, to your family. But at the time, the neighborhood that I was living in didn't have they either didn't have the yin-yangs, or they just didn't care what was happening to the Jackson family down here at 291 Thompson Road, Sharon, Tennessee, zip code 38255, which at the time was considered Route 1, Sharon, Tennessee. They've changed that now since then. But I want you to listen to the beginning phases of the loss of over $6 trillion, and God only knows that the lives and the arms and the legs and the ears and the eyes that was sacrificed for this particular mistake that you're fixing to listen to. I remember it just like it was yesterday. A matter of fact, I remember Desert Shield whenever it first unfolded towards all the bombs blowing up over in Iraq or Iran or wherever it was. Because at the time I was laying in Lourdes Hospital up in Paducah, Kentucky, where some idiot tried to run me over that was racing, that hit a brand new Dodge truck and caused me to hit in for in and turn over again and again and again towards knocking me completely off the road into a ravine. I stayed up there for 3 or 4 days. I think it was in 1990 or 1991 before I ever got married to a Shirley K. Jackson. So if you don't mind, please listen and watch this, because this is going to be the true historical writings pertaining to the Bush family. And the thing about it is, I looked, and there was an incident that happened on the ranch, the Bush Ranch down in Texas, pertaining to, there wasn't just one helicopter accident, there was, I think, 2 helicopter accidents, and I believe one of those accidents that occurred, in which it's all documented, was an Arab family member that at the time had such close relationships with the Bush family, going all the way back to not just Bush Sr. that become the president, that was the vice president under Reagan, but his father, who had a great deal of influences pertaining to the oil tycoon industry over in the Middle East. So yeah, this thing grows deep, and it goes way back in exchange to a group of people that thought that they was going to be able to destroy the will of God. And as they was trying to destroy the will of God, they brought destruction into their own country and up into their own laps here in America. And now we're $30 trillion in debt. The drugs has invaded our country. Guns is everywhere pertaining to gun violence, street violence, massacre shootings. Our jails is completely full. We can't build them quick enough to put criminals in that wants to break the law. And you wonder how come all these horrible events continue to keep happening to us, pertaining to the droughts out west, pertaining to all the fires, pertaining to 3 massive hurricanes that is hit down in the southern Louisiana area. Not counting all the other ones, but I'm talking about the monsters. I'm talking about the major ones. Just within the past 16 years. Matter of fact, one just got through erupting within about 24 hours ago, as I'm speaking, down in the same part of the parishes down in Louisiana of another catastrophic event. I just got through seeing it on the news, and it's just, in ways, it actually is worse in some areas of Louisiana than what it was during Katrina, because the brunt of the blow pertaining to the wind damage that hit in that same area was more towards the Gulf of Mississippi and over towards Pass Christian and over towards the next little town into Louisiana. In other words, it kind of split hairs between the state lines between Mississippi and Louisiana down on the far end. This time it was further east. This time it was more of a lick that was going in the direction towards a direct path towards New Orleans, just a little bit west of there. But I would like for you to listen to this, and then I'll say something at the end.
In history, both from our own experience in Vietnam, from the Soviets' experience in Afghanistan, even the British experience before then. I mean, you hope that you learn, but basically you iterate, and it doesn't always necessarily mean you get any smarter.
Yeah, we'll see what the president says tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks, Lawrence.
Thank you, Rachel. At 3:29 p.m. today, East Coast time, America's war in Afghanistan came to an end. Here is how it began, 26 days after 9/11.
Good afternoon. On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against Al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. These carefully targeted actions are designed to disrupt the use of Afghanistan as a terrorist base of operations and to attack the military capability of the Taliban regime. I gave Taliban leaders a series of clear and specific demands: close terrorist training camps, hand over leaders of the Al-Qaeda network, and return all foreign nationals, including American citizens unjustly detained in your country. None of these demands were met. And now, the Taliban will pay a price. We will win this conflict by the patient accumulation of successes, by meeting a series of challenges with determination and will and purpose. We did not ask for this mission, but we will fulfill it. The name of today's military operation is Enduring Freedom. We will not waver. We will not tire. We will not falter. And we will not fail. Peace and freedom will prevail. Thank you. May God continue to bless America.
The American news media and the political class found nothing to criticize in that speech, not one word. But we did waver, and we did tire, and freedom did not endure in Afghanistan. Here is how it ended.
I'm here to announce the completion of our withdrawal from Afghanistan and the end of the military mission to evacuate American citizens, third country nationals, and vulnerable Afghans. The last C-17 lifted off from Hamid Karzai International Airport on August 30th, this afternoon, at 3:29 p.m. East Coast time. Tonight's withdrawal signifies both the end of the military component of the evacuation, but also the end of the nearly 20-year mission that began in Afghanistan shortly after September 11, 2001. It's a mission that brought Osama bin Laden to a just end, along with many of his al-Qaeda co-conspirators. And it was not a cheap mission. The cost was 2,461 U.S. service members and civilians killed, and more than 20,000 who were injured. Sadly, that includes 13 U.S. service members who were killed last week by an ISIS-K suicide bomber. We honor their sacrifice today as we remember their heroic accomplishments. No words from me could possibly capture the full measure of sacrifices and accomplishments of those who served, nor the emotions they're feeling at this moment.
Also killed in the 20-year war were at least 66,000 members of Afghanistan's military and police, 51,191 members of the Taliban and other opposition fighters, 47,245 Afghan civilians, including children and babies, 1,144 Allied service members, including from NATO member states, 444 aid workers, and 72 journalists. The number of civilian deaths could be much larger, but that is the official number, 47,245. You can call the 20-year war America's longest war only if you're willing to overlook the nearly 300 years of war waged against the people who were found on this continent when the Europeans arrived. America's genocidal war against native tribes did not officially end until the beginning of the 20th century. Today, President Biden issued a written statement saying, "I want to thank our commanders and men and women serving under them for their execution of the dangerous retrograde from Afghanistan as scheduled in the early morning hours of August 31st, Kabul time, with no further loss of American lives." The past 17 days have seen our troops execute the largest airlift in U.S. history, evacuating over 120,000 U.S. citizens of our allies and Afghan allies of the United States. They have done it with unmatched courage, professionalism, and resolve. Now, our 20-year military presence in Afghanistan has ended. I have asked the Secretary of State to lead the continued coordination with our international partners to ensure safe passage for any Americans, Afghan partners, and foreign nationals who want to leave Afghanistan. And joining us now, one of the 800,000 people who served in the military in Afghanistan, Lucas Kunce, a former U.S. Marine captain who served 2 tours of duty in Afghanistan. He's now a Democratic candidate for Senate in Missouri. Also with us, David Rothkopf, foreign affairs analyst and columnist for the Daily Beast and USA Today. He is the host of Deep State Radio podcast. Lucas Kunce, let me begin with you as someone who served there. You were...
I want to stop right there before we get too involved in their further talks. You keep in mind that shortly after 9/11, And whenever I say shortly after 9/11, I'm talking about the day after 9/11. Whenever aviation pertaining to the civilian aircraft was ordered by the federal government to be grounded. There was one particular family that was given presidential permission of leaving the United States, which was the Saudi Arabia officials. Keep in mind that out of all the terrorists, the majority of the people come from Saudi Arabia, was trained in Saudi Arabia before they come to America to plot their revenge. Keep in mind that it was George Walter Bush Sr. who had convinced, through Ronald Reagan administration, through the superpowers, of ending of the Cold War between Russia and America, of the falling of the Berlin Wall, that the world was not going to end by a nuclear holocaust, but it was to end the way that the King James Version Bible had predicted for it to end. The only problem was they had absolutely no vision or no motives for the very person that's talking to you right now, that was gifted by God in regards of knowing all these things that was going to occur in end time biblical Bible prophecy. They had no ideology or motives towards wanting to distribute that to the American people and to help the founder of the Windmill Ministries missions. You know, if I hadn't actually went through something like this, knowing the American history and knowing other nationality histories, if somebody would have written this all in a book or put it on Facebook or whatever on some other platform, or even made a movie out of it, I would have said, no way would have the American government have went up against a man that was chosen by God to bring forth a message, and because they didn't like the message, they thought that they was going to bamboozle God and God's messenger. Well, I hung on. And every time that they would knock me down, I'd get back up. I would be banned from all these churches because I was speaking on radio stations, or I wound up on TV stations down in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, of discovering the truth, or at least a deeper portion of the truth pertaining to the Oklahoma bombing, pertaining to Timothy McVeigh Nichols that occurred in 1995. I kept popping up in different areas to the degree that the only way that they was going to be able to stop me was to assassinate me the way that they assassinated JFK, Martin Luther King, and Buford Pulser. I don't know what has happened with the church stance towards wanting to see biblical Bible prophecy fulfill itself here in America, especially here in Tennessee. But man, whenever it comes to hypocrisy, I have never seen so much hypocrisy in my entire life. And to think that we stand under the shelter of the cross and we convince all these other nationalities that we are a nation of humiliation, that we have great fortitude in the teachings of Christ as far as doing things on a humanitarian scale. Talk about the white man speaketh with a forked tongue. I have not only seen, heard, felt, but experienced these things firsthand, that now I can authenticate by proving, pertaining to paperwork, various studies, various close encounters with the law, various things that has occurred, even leading into me coming back here in 2014 and being attacked by a whole society out here pertaining to a neighborhood that did not want this ministry to succeed. Beginning with the Bushes and the Reagans. Beginning at the White House. That finally convinced the rest of the superpowers, China, India, Russia, all the other big guys out there, that there was a promise of peace. You heard the 43rd president get up there and talk about peace, that peace would endure. Well, it would have had if they'd have went about it in the right way. Peace would have endured. But not the way that they went about doing it. It's all backfired. And it's backfired in all of them's faces to the point that now, consequently, we're all paying the price towards our roads dilapidating, our bridges falling apart, our schools is unsafe, towards having to have marshals in our schools and having fire marshals on our airplanes. And just this year alone, there's been over 40,000 incidences towards people getting into it, towards wanting to basically choke one another to death up in the skies. What happened to the commercial, Fly the Friendly Skies? Well, the friendly skies didn't become all that friendly in 9/11, now did it? Whenever we seen airplanes be basically transfigurated into missiles that done the destruction that it done during 9/11. It's only been by the grace of God that I've been able to hold on and still have a right mind, and I'm still my bodily functions is all there pertaining to me not either being crippled or dead. It's only by the will of God that I'm sitting here right now being able to explain this to various people that want to get on my platform and listen to the things that I have to say. We're going to listen to these two individuals, and then after that, because of time delay, I don't want to get too long on this video. I want to hear what they have to say and go ahead and video it, because I haven't heard it yet. But I wanted to put this in how that certain people of top brass have brought destruction into their own country, into their own organizations, into their own churches, into their own communities right here in America. And if something like this would have happened either before the Civil War or during the Civil War, I promise you, because of the things that they taught and how that they believed in punishing those that deserve to be punished, there would have been no ifs, ands about it. There is some people that has worked out of the White House in the past, not necessarily right now, but in the past, that if we was living in that same era, they would have been lined up against the wall and they would have been executed in front of everybody because of what that they have done pertaining to the leadership here in America. Not counting what's happened in the church sector. I'm just viewing right now of what's happened in the political sector, not counting what's happened in the church sector. There is some people that is going to have to give an account beginning in Kenton, Tennessee, and the surrounding Obion, Weakley County area, right here in Northwest Tennessee, and state officials up in Nashville that will have to give an account in front of God pertaining to all this that has happened to the American people and the world. Let's listen to this. I am so upset at what has happened pertaining to the misery that all our military soldiers has had to sacrifice including the last 13. Just to walk away with basically our tail tucked between our legs.
By General McKenzie, by President Biden, what are your feelings as this 20-year war has now finally officially come to an end?
Yeah, thanks, Lawrence. For me, it's just this feeling of grim relief that it's finally over, and that it should have happened a long, long time ago. And so, America kind of forgot what was going over there for a long time. And last week, when we lost 13 service members, that was a reminder to them of what many of us experienced while we were overseas. And so for me this week, and what I'm seeing right now is just, it's really a reminder of probably the saddest, most somber moment of my life. And that was standing on a flight line in Helmand, Afghanistan, in the middle of the night with about 100 other Marines, saluting the dead body of a fallen member of our battalion as he was put onto an airplane for his final ride home. That is what the cost of war is. We've been reminded of it, and I'm just grimly relieved that there's not going to be another U.S. service member experiencing that.
David Rothkopf, I found it striking in reviewing President Bush's announcement of this war, what he said in that speech about the objectives. And for everyone in the last 2 weeks who's been saying we should stay there longer, we shouldn't be exiting the way we're exiting, we shouldn't be exiting quickly on the Biden schedule, if you can call that quickly after 20 years, not one of the justifications for staying in Afghanistan was included in anything George W. Bush said in the announcement speech for this war. It was always to preserve something or some kind of condition that existed after the war started. The arguments about what's going to happen to liberal education in Afghanistan, issues that had absolutely nothing to do with the start of the war.
Yeah, I think there was a brief period of grace there for George Bush where he got it right. He got the response to 9/11 right, and I think he got launching this mission right. If we had done what he said...
The people thought that it was right. They felt like in their hearts that it was right. They had been bamboozled by the officials up in the White House that it was right. And that was the left turn that we took to where we should have took the right turn in going after the true perpetrators who masterminded 9/11 and also financed it. The very same people that has been financing terrorism for years and years and years. But they're doing it in a slick Willie type way. The very same people that killed a journalist. The Saudi Arabians. They are the ones that has come in with this type of influence. Bin Laden was not powerful enough to pull this off. The Taliban wasn't smart enough or powerful enough to pull this off. We went after the bad guys, but it was the wrong bad guys. But at the time, whenever all this was going on, everybody was rooting Bush on. Oh yeah, it was a rallying cry. Let's go after the bloodthirsty bastards that caused so much havoc during 9/11. So it was all a diversion. Kind of like if you're going to rob a bank, you go to the other side of town, you start a fire, while everybody's running in one direction. You and your buddies are going to the bank towards getting all the loot out of it. Basically, the Saudi Arabians had done the same thing. They had created a diversion by not allowing for bin Laden to come back to their own state. And basically, at that point in time, they was using their own cousin as an scapegoat, as a ploy. And of course, bin Laden didn't have nowhere else to go other than to go where he knew, where they was just as corrupt and just as cruel and just as mean as he was towards trying to seek refuge over in Afghanistan. And that's the only reason why that the Bush family at that time, which already knew what was going on in Afghanistan, just like they already knew what was going on in Iraq and Iran. But it was the only reason why that they chose to go to war to begin with. Was because bin Laden had to have a safe haven. Well, Eric Snowden needed a safe haven. Eric Snowden was trying to help the American people towards letting the people know how this technology was interfering with people's privacy. And because Eric Snowden told the truth to the American people, once more, he was another one that got punished. Now, Eric Snowden chose to go to Russia for his safe haven. Does that mean that we're supposed to go to war with the Russians because of Eric Snowden? That wound up, I guess, in a way, blackmailing the American government because he was supposed to have remained silent and quiet pertaining to the information that he had discovered. See, the whole thing now is starting to come around towards what we're actually seeing. And whenever you're aiding and abetting, that's exactly what the Bush family was doing at this particular point in time. They was aiding and abetting, knowing that it was the Saudi Arabians that had created, mastermind 9/11. Like I said, if we was living in or before the Civil War era and they found this out, they would have immediately taken them out on a wall somewhere and they would have publicly executed them. Because now we see the consequences in what's happened after 30 plus years has went by. It has taken this long before the whole truth, nothing but the truth, has come out to the American people in bits and pieces. Do you swear to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, the whole truth, so help you God? It has taken this long to realize that there was a left turn made whenever it should have been a right one. Everybody at that time was scared. They was all going out buying guns. Oh, there was a big church movement within 6 months to a year after 9/11 had occurred. Oh, everybody thought that the end of the world was going to happen. Yeah? Well, that was very short-lived. In the meantime, we had men and women that was sacrificing their lives on a day-to-day level of basically being a silent war that had become silent up until just recently to the American people. And now we've got people that are opening up their eyes that was no longer associated with that administration 2 or 3 administrations ago pertaining to the Republicans that thought that they was going to pull the wool over everybody's eyes. And now people are starting to realize what actually has occurred. After all the sacrifices, all the money, you just got to seeing the statistics and us being now $30 trillion in debt. If this would have happened in any other country, including a third world country over in the Middle East, they would have immediately gathered up the very people that I'm talking about, and they would have held them accountable. And those people over there usually don't play too many games pertaining to holding their officials accountable. We have set back and we have allowed ourselves to be bamboozled. In the meantime, the individual that's talking to you right now has been marked, beginning with the officials over in Kenton, Tennessee, and it spread, it snowballed. They went from trying to designate me towards me being a wacko, somebody that was crazy, from somebody that was demon possessed, and then even went a step further from going from somebody that was demon possessed to a homegrown terrorist. And in all 3 categories, The devil has failed. Satan has failed. And I can sit here right now and say, thank you, Lord Jesus Christ, for being on my side and being with me during all the trials and tribulations that I had to go through various situations for the past 30-something years. And I do mean it's a stack full of them. Never been violent. Never been brutal. And the reason why is because I stayed with the teachings of Christ to be wise as serpents but harmless as doves. Oh, there's been times that I contemplated towards brutality, but it was usually only towards myself, towards wanting to escape this torment that they had brought, not only into my life, but into everybody's life that now we're all suffering the consequences on account of. In the meantime, the big guys, they walk away with their pockets full towards being the 1%ers. And the 99%ers, which is us, are the ones that's doing the suffering and living in crime, corrosion streets, pertaining to the homeless and pertaining to the veterans that come back with messed up minds and messed up bodies. Basically messed up psychological warfare to the point that now they're basically worthless to anybody. And it hasn't been until Mr. Trump come on board in recognizing that this was one of the areas that the American people had failed in towards not taking care of their veterans. Inconclusive to what my brother and I, David Jeffrey Jackson, had intentions towards wanting to open up some sort of a shelter in regards to the veterans right here at 291 Thompson Road, that everybody in this area just about it was solely against. But yet now they're flying their American flags and they act like, oh, we're very patriot now. You know, the very people that when I first come here would have actually burnt the American flag, and now they've decided to fly them. But have they decided that they're willing to die for that American flag? That's the $64,000 question. Once more, I have been penalized, punished, tormented by my own people of standing up and trying to do what was taught by my ancestors of being a good patriot. And not backing down from corruption, not backing down from the ways of darkness, not backing down from rapes and murders and child molestations and people being fraudulent towards making illegal money and robbing banks and stealing cars. This whole thing has been twisted so corruptly. It's no way going to come together towards fixing itself unless we, the people, decide to do the right thing in the spirit world towards allowing for God to fix it for us. That's the only way that it's going to be fixed now at this particular juncture. Because at this point in time, we're seeing massive fires, massive floods, massive hurricanes and tornadoes, massive confusion over pertaining to our foreign affairs. We're seeing drugs. We're seeing people committing suicide. We're seeing gun violence on our streets. And we have the administrations that has been in power for the past 30 years to blame for this. But yet now the people are still electing these same people. Tell me that these people hadn't been bamboozled. Tell me that the people isn't some sort of a genie type spell. You remember the movie, The Genie Girl, that come out of the bottle? And how that she'd wiggle her nose and she'd spellbound people? Yeah. Well, that was just Hollywood. This is the real deal. What you're seeing today pertaining to the ending of a catastrophe towards a group of people that chose to go left instead of right, you're seeing the end results of it today, which is the very opposite of peace and utopia and prosperity for all. You got to call it like it is. If it walks like a duck, smells like a duck, moves like a duck, sounds like a duck, it probably is a duck. And if you don't believe that, you need to go down to some of those parishes that as of yesterday, or go to Waverly, Tennessee, and go look at the real reality of what the realness of reality looks like. Because all this other stuff that's been going around has been a group of people that did not show any type of appreciation towards the blessings that they already currently have in regards to their big, nice, fancy cars and their big, nice houses. All their wealth won't buy them not one seat into the heavenly kingdom. You know why? Because they haven't been true to themselves. They haven't been true to one another. They haven't been true to their Maker, pertaining to God Almighty. And God said that He seeketh those who worship Him in truth and in spirit. And if they're not worshiping Him in truth and in spirit, they're not worshiping Him. They're worshiping the devil. Something that's disguised. An imposter.
In that speech and that segment that you showed, we probably would have been okay. In fact, I think almost any U.S. president would have done precisely what he said. Send in U.S. troops for a mission that was counterterrorism, targeting Al-Qaeda, targeting the Taliban that was...
Now this is just showing you how in left field that this individual right here is, pertaining to basically standing with the Bush decision in going to war against the terrorism. They are terrorists. Don't get me wrong. The Taliban, the Jihad, all them people, ISIS, all them people over there are terrorists. They're brutal, they're cold-hearted, they're barbarians. But it was the wrong group of terrorists, is what I'm trying to say. This individual don't know that. He's still standing on the sidelines towards rooting Bush on. Yeah. Go Bush, go Bush, go, go, go. While the whole time, the 43rd President of the United States was one of the worst presidents that the American people has ever had pertaining to the catastrophe of Katrina. There was people down in that lower part of Mississippi and Louisiana that went for days, without any type of even seeing any type of help whatsoever. They was basically abandoned and had to deal with the snakes and the alligators and the mosquitoes and the bugs, and had to deal with nightmare situations towards sleeping, not knowing if they was going to wake up the next morning, having to live on top of a housetop for days before anybody come and rescued them during the 43rd President's administration. And this guy here wants to sit up there and cheer him on. I think I've heard enough from this individual. I thought that I wanted to hear what he had to say, but I don't think I do. And you know why? It's because it's the same old song and dance that has put us where we are today, and nobody understanding or recognizing accountability issues towards what's actually occurred. In the meantime, you got somebody like me that's trying to explain to you what's happened, but out of pride or out of hard-headedness, they still have chosen to shut their ears and be stiff-necked. In the meantime, I'm watching this country fall apart through major events, regardless whether it's the floods in Waverly, another massive hurricane that's hit down on the coast area, and the three hurricanes that I'm talking about, Katrina, Laura, and the one just recently, those are just the three basic top hurricanes. The Gulf Coast has been hit a numerous amount of times for the past 30 some odd years. All these different hard events that continue to keep rattling American lives. And of course, what happens whenever there's a catastrophe? Well, the insurance declares it as a total loss. That way the insurance don't have to be out a whole lot of money and put the blame on the American people's backs pertaining to the taxpayers. Just like this $6 trillion and all this debt. You don't think that the Bush family is going to stand one day in front of God and give an account for what that they have done towards misleading their own people? That's all I got to say about this. Shalom and good luck to all of us. And may God have mercy on all of us because of this evil demonic movement that began in 1988. It actually began in 1983. But there was various psychiatric communities that wanted to stand behind all of this and support all this. That's another bunch, including the church sector, that needs to have the finger pointed towards being to blame, beginning with the Bushes and yes, the Reagans. Good luck to all of us as we end. Shalom.